Brothers and sisters, how terrible life would be for tens or maybe even hundreds of millions of human beings across the globe, if not for the promise by God to make all things new. The promise that suffering and death are not the last word, but only the prelude to a future everlasting life filled with love and joy. Over the millennia, suffering has taken every form imaginable. Congenital disorders, sickness, disease, poverty, accidents resulting in permanent disabilities, the effects of natural disasters, hatred, persecution, war, ethnic cleansing, neglect, and of course abuse in its various forms, whether physical, emotional, or sexual. To all those who've suffered in the past and those who continue to suffer at the hands of misfortune, injustice, and in some cases sheer evil, God continues to say, as he did through Isaiah in today's first reading, "Courage, do not be afraid. Look, your God is coming. Vengeance is coming. The retribution of God, he's coming to save you." Brothers and sisters, today in our Archdiocese is Safeguarding Sunday, which is a time to commit once more to creating a place where everyone, in particular our children and vulnerable adults, is safe and their dignity respected. On this day, we begin by recalling as a church, with shame, our sins of the past. We then reaffirm our commitment to ongoing restitution for those who've had evils perpetrated against them. And finally, we resolve to do better for the protection and safeguarding of all children and vulnerable adults from harm, both today and into the future. For those who are listening closely to my words, you may have noted that I said our sins of the past rather than the sins of the past, whereby I would be attributing those sins to a past brother or priest or bishop or the like. You may take exception to me wording my homily like this, but let me explain why I've chosen to do this. Brothers and sisters, my immediate response to the abuse revelations many years ago was, I've not done this, so why should I have to pay the price of these men's sins? I still had much to learn at that point, as one Friday night when feeding the homeless, I met a small group of Aboriginal men. On seeing my collar, one of the men began a verbal tirade against me for the abuses committed by brothers and priests against the Aboriginal children in Western Australia. As I tried my best to calmly listen to his verbal abuse against me, the Aboriginal man sitting next to him kept telling him off for harassing someone who was innocent of the crime. I'm not sure exactly what I was thinking at the time, but my response was, no, let him speak. He's not had justice, and he needs to let it out. After he had finished, I apologised as sincerely as I could on behalf of the church for the evil done against him and his brothers. I was surprised by his response. His voice calmed at once and his face softened. He then picked up his guitar off the floor and began to play and sing Amazing Grace. How hard it is, brothers and sisters, to apologise for someone else's sin. But this might be what we all need to do, especially on behalf of those brothers and priests who've already died and can themselves no longer say sorry and be brought to temporal justice. If you think about it, I'm sure all of you who are parents have apologised at some point, and maybe on many occasions, for your children's bad behaviour. Why did you do this? Because you love your children and you truly are sorry for whatever mischief they got up to at the time. Jesus, who was sinless, died on the cross for all the sins of the world. In a sense, when he took on all the sin and suffering of the world, he said sorry to all victims of evil and injustice, though he himself had committed no sin or evil. As Jesus' followers said in today's gospel, he's done all things well. And as we are called to follow Christ and take up our cross, that may include carrying the cross of the sins of our sons, daughters, husbands, wives, and the like. Jesus, in taking up his cross, was ready to offer his life in order to heal the brokenness of all the world's victims. As we know, ultimately there was a price to pay for all the good that Jesus did, including the healing of the deaf man in today's gospel. Brothers and sisters, I want to finish my homily today with a few thoughts on those who perpetrate abuse. While studies are inconclusive, some suggest that while the majority of children that are abused do not become pedophiles, there is a sizable percentage of pedophiles that were themselves abused as children. And so we see how evil perpetuates itself from one generation to the next. Furthermore, those pedophiles who as children were as victims abused themselves join the group of the most despised people on the earth. I've met some of them in my prison visits, and often they shake in fear for their lives. So let us not forget that God has come also to liberate and free those who commit the most heinous crime from the deafness of their affliction. For as St. James' letter tells us today, God makes no distinction between classes of people. It is for this reason that the Church, in the rite of reconciliation, must continue to offer to them the limitless mercy and forgiveness of God, where they are truly contrite for their sins. As difficult as it is to hear these words, I hope and pray that we are all able to struggle to find that middle ground where both mercy and justice meet, together, hand in hand, following Christ, the sinless one, who wanted all people to be saved, and who at the end of the day died to take away all of the pain, evil, woundedness, and of course, sins of the world, even the most heinous.